Hello everyone, Storm11 here. Today we'll be tracking two different systems here that could bring in a winter storm threat across some of these regions, across the central and northern plains, and also the upper Midwest. We're also going to be tracking another system that be going on across portions of the Ohio Valley, portions of the Midwest, and also across the several plains here, across some of these regions right here, that can also bring a winter storm threat, perhaps a severe weather, and maybe an ice storm as well. Which we'll be talking about those. Let's first get into our first system running this region right in there. And we'll have a clipper system going by later this afternoon or evening, actually right around now. That could bring in a couple inches of snow across the upper Midwest. But then here comes our first system. This is a low pressure system coming off the Rockies, bringing in at times some moderate to heavy snow across portions of Nebraska, South Dakota, Iowa, and also portions of Minnesota, eventually getting to Wisconsin, which can really bring up those snowfall totals pretty up there as well. If we actually take a look at the total snowfall with this, now this is in a 10 to 1 range. Uh, we'll probably look at Catch Era in just a moment, which I think, in my opinion, probably a little bit more accurate to read snowfall totals. But you can see here, widespread 7 to possibly, 9 or 10 inches of snow. When you get those greens, that's above a foot of snow there as well. And if we kind of get to the Cachera amounts of snow, which is a different measurement, let's do it right there. And with this measurement of snow, it does a pretty good job with it. If we can get this to come up here. There we go. And as you can see here, here's the GFS. You can see here, it's quite different here in a different measurement of snow. You actually got higher snowfall totals across, portions of South Dakota, Nebraska, you know, 6+ inches across most of Iowa and southern Minnesota. And it kind of gets off the screen there, but possibly a foot of snow into Wisconsin there as well. And this is something I would recommend using for measurement of snowfall. The last time we had a winter storm, we actually used the Cachera method, and it did a pretty good job with it there. So we'll definitely be using this for for future videos there. I mean, you can see here quite a difference here with the 10 to 1 range and then the Cachera there as well. Let's move on to the Canadian model here, which this this model here nailed the last storm system. So we'll take a look into this. A little bit further south here, you can see a band of heavy snow across northern Missouri, southern Iowa, to portions of Illinois there. And you can see they're not too big of a deal across some of the other regions there. The only difference about this here is it's further south. It's also indicating perhaps a pretty good round of icing across portions of Kansas and maybe eventually getting into northern Illinois there as well. And we'll take a look to the snowfall totals in the 10 to 1. You can see here showing some pretty good swath of snow, generally 5 to 8 inches across, northern Missouri, southern Iowa, to portions of Wisconsin there as well. And if we look at Cachera amounts here, which we'll try to get there a little bit quickly. And there we go. And you can see here, definitely quite similar here to the 10 to 1 range. But it's also showing this, more widespread activity. You can see there's even amounts all the way up across the Dakotas, Minnesota, 5 to 8 inches. Portions of Nebraska, it's also 5 to 8 inches. So it's definitely looking to be a pretty widespread event. I mean, if we do compare it to the GFS model, it's actually, a little bit more compact with the event. But the Canadian model is actually quite widespread. It actually shows higher amounts of multiple different regions. So there's still some uncertainty with this there as well. And then let's take a look into the European model. And as you can see here, pretty good swath of snow going on across, Iowa, eventually getting into Wisconsin there. It's not going to be around for a while. Just to let you guys know about that. And also, quite a bit of snow for, Nebraska and South Dakota there as well. Now, I don't have access to Kachera with the European model, so we're at to use the 10-to-1 ratio. And as you can see here, it shows a pretty good swath of snow going on across, portions of Iowa, eventually getting into Wisconsin here. Generally 5 to 8 inches of snow. Another hot spot back across central Nebraska there as well. So there's a pretty good indication that, a good chunk of Iowa eventually getting into Wisconsin can actually see a pretty good winter storm there as well. But there's still some uncertainties across, the Dakotas and Minnesota and around Nebraska. So we got some differences with the models there as well. Let's take a look at some higher resolution models. And this is also another model that also nailed the last event. It's gonna be hard to see, but you can see here definitely some heavy sleet it's trying to show, and even some at times some heavy freezer rain there as well. If we take a look into in Kachera for snowfall totals, you can see here kind of like the Canadian model. I mean, hitting at different spots. You can see there's one area across up here in the north, which is also adding on to what's going on right now. You can see it shows 3 inches, so subtract that about 3 inches, and it's really just 5 inches of snow from this event. But look across southeastern Iowa here, showing snowfall totals as high as 10 inches, even going into portions of northern Illinois there as well. Definitely quite a widespread event, to say the least here. If I were to make a forecast right now, I'll probably put a widespread 3 to 5 inches of snow here, but we still got some uncertainties here, and I'll probably release one tomorrow. And this is the NAM. You can see here showing it seems to be a little bit further north with this here, which the NAM did not do a good job on the last event. So we won't really be following this model that much. And it definitely looks like it could be the highest, and yeah, it is. And you can see here, widespread, 8+ inches of snow across most of Minnesota, the eastern Dakotas, northern Iowa, and also a good chunk of Wisconsin there as well, and eventually getting up to upper Michigan. Could be a little bit overdone there, to say the least. So I won't really trust the NAM all that much there as well. But what we do know is things like a winter storm is likely with this system, and I think the main bullseye is really going to be across central and eastern Iowa, and eventually getting into several Wisconsin. And there's also going to be a widespread, probably general 3 to 5 inches across a good chunk of the Dakotas, Minnesota, and also a good chunk of Wisconsin as well, and maybe back across portions of Nebraska there as well. And that's pretty much all we know at this point. So that's that system out of the way. Let's talk about our upcoming system. Now we have a little bit better agreement with this. Our cold fronts right here, it's will eventually become a little bit more stationary, eventually becoming a warm front. Definitely gotta watch for Oklahoma and Texas here. There's a chance some of those guys may actually see a decent amount of snow. You can see it's picking up from the GFS. But then as you can see here, this is going to be becoming a little bit more of a cutoff low. It's cut off from the polar jet stream, which is right up here. It'll eventually connect to the polar jet stream later on down the road. And what that could do, that can make this system here a little bit stronger, as well as also a little bit slower and further to the west. And that's what's really been the trend so far. So at this point here, on for an average here, your low pressure system looks to be tracking. Uh, get my pen out here. So it'd be developing somewhere in here and eventually tracking up something like this. Yeah, pretty much your average low track. Definitely something like that. And you can see here later on down the road, definitely some heavy icing could be an issue across portions of Missouri, even back across Oklahoma. Then eventually that cold air really starts to come in, especially for some of that dynamic cooling from the system, you get around a heavy snow on the wintry side of things. You can see here, could possibly be some near blizzard conditions, but we can't be very specific on things, not just yet. We're still a little ways away from the system. So there could be a little bit of an ice storm threat, possibly in some of these regions right in here. Could see an ice storm threat, and meanwhile, a little bit further north, could also see a winter storm threat. We also got to pay attention to some of these regions right in here. There's definitely a severe weather threat starting to come up here across some of these regions here. We'll definitely take a look into that in just a moment there as well. So let's take a look into the Canadian model with this storm system. You can definitely see here, it's definitely a little bit further east of that rain to snow line, or you could say the wintry mix line. You can see here at times some heavy freezing rain across portions of northern Arkansas, southeastern Missouri, southwestern Kentucky, southern Illinois, Michigan to central Indiana. And you can see here it brings in a pretty good round of just ice there, freezing rain. Eventually transitions over to heavy snow on the back side of the system here. Here comes your low right here going along the Ohio River. That would continue to move to the northeast. Still got to pay attention to this region here for any severe weather potential there as well. And there's also a chance this thing here could bring in a lot of rain as well. And looking like a better chance for that scenario will be probably somewhere in here. Maybe not that large, but maybe somewhere in here there could be a little bit of a flash flood threat there as well. So that's another threat on the table there. So this will definitely be something we have to pay attention to. And then if we look onto the European model with this, you see here, here's your cold front right here. Could be some snow on the backside of this cold front. We're going to see depending on if that cold air can catch up. Definitely looking to be a little bit further to the west here. So your low is right here. Heavy ice across some of these regions here. And that's probably going to be the biggest concern with the system here. It's going to bring in some heavy ice potentially. I mean, again, very heavy ice across northern Illinois. There's definitely trying to pick up some icing across portions of southern Michigan and also portions of the northeast there as well. Not as significant in the northeast, but definitely got to pay attention to this region right here for any ice here. That's definitely an area to watch here. And even for a lot of snow there as well. If we back this up here, and you can see here, but the potential for severe weather, you got your cold front right here. Your warm front is likely to be somewhere right in here. And we definitely got to watch this region right here for any severe weather potential here, which will definitely get into the dynamics of things stuff like that in just a moment. You can see there, it then eventually moves out to northeast. And it brings in even more snow across portions of Iowa and several Wisconsin. But things will likely change here, even though we have an agreement. I do expect some things to change here as well. And also, one thing to notice here along that cold front, you got some pretty good thunderstorm activity here, maybe as far north as Kentucky there, which we'll take a look into the dynamics and stuff like that there as well. But either way, it's going to bring in a lot of wind. So this is a European model. We're looking into a different website. Here comes your next system right in here. Here it comes. If we turn on wind gusts, now the European model typically overdoes the wind gusts, just to keep in mind. It does show 50 plus mile an hour wind gusts across portions of Alabama. Look into the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee, showing wind gusts 70 plus miles an hour. Not even the mountains, wind gusts 50 plus miles an hour. So it's definitely looking like it would be a big time wind maker. I mean, widespread wind gusts 35 plus miles an hour for a pretty good area. Here's the GFS, definitely weaker. It does do a little bit better job with those wind gusts. It's even showing wind gusts getting close to 50 miles an hour still across these regions here, but the general 30 to 40 mile an hour wind gusts here as well. So it doesn't really matter what the winds, this system here, we'll have strong winds either way. Just to keep in mind of that. And then on the cold side of things, even showing possibility of near blizzard conditions. Showing wind gusts possibly up to 40 miles an hour. Now you gotta have sustained winds for a certain amount of time to enter have blizzard type of conditions. Just to keep in mind of that. I don't know how much time, but it has to be around 35 or over 35 mile an hour winds for a certain period of time to be considered as blizzard conditions. So just to keep in mind of that. Let's move on to the severe weather side of things. Here's the Storm Prediction Center for the rest of today. Maybe some thunder across portions of California. Same way for day 2, which they definitely need some rain, by the way. To day 3, marching risk across southwest central Texas there. Then on day 4, we haven't seen this in a long time. We got a 50% slight risk across southeastern Louisiana into southern Mississippi. Includes places like New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Metairie, Lafayette, and also Gulfport, Mississippi there as well. And even on day 5, slight risk moves to the east across southeastern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and Alabama, even including portions of the Florida Panhandle, which includes places like New Orleans, Mobile, Metairie. Uh, hopefully that's how you say that. Do apologize if I did not pronounce that correctly. Gulfport, and then Kenner, Louisiana, there as well. Too early to get to Pacifics with this here, but let's take a look to some of the dynamics and stuff like that. So we'll start off with the GFS. And as you can see here, you got a pretty good line here of thunderstorms right here. And if the thunderstorms do explode far up into the atmosphere, which those winds would definitely be whipping up there, which we'll take a look to those winds in just a moment. Sometimes they could bring down to the surface. And if we move on to another hour here, your cold front is going to be suffering, well, probably just by looking at this image here, you get a little bit more of a hooded front here. Your warm front is probably something like this, and here's your cold front right here. So anybody generally like south of the warm front here may need to watch for some severe weather there as well. I don't think it's going to get too far east into the Carolinas here. We're just going to see about that because your low pressure system will be moving more south to north fashion there. And let's take a go into those upper dynamics here. So this is 850 millibar winds here. And this is what we call wind energy for some of these thunderstorms. And when thunderstorms can build up into the atmosphere this high, sometimes those winds up there can come down to the surface. And as you can see here, here's your cold front right here. We already got winds as high as 55 knots across portions of Kentucky. Then here you go here. You got a lot of divergence going on here. That's going to let those storms build up into the atmosphere. Let me put this as a different color here. Let's turn this to green so we can see a little bit better. So you get divergence right here. And you see when you get to these red colors here, that's 50 plus knot winds there. And in miles an hour, that's about 55 mile an hour winds up there. If any thunderstorm builds up, some of those winds could come down to the surface there, and that's something we're going to have to pay attention to. You can see the winds do die down later on down the road, but if we kind of look a little bit earlier on, you definitely has some strong winds going on across. And also keep in mind, this is not surface winds. This is winds at 850 millibars. So this is in the lower parts of the atmosphere, just to keep in mind of that. So you got winds as high as 67 knots, 72 knots. If any thunderstorm again develops with winds that strong up there, sometimes it can bring down to the surface. That's where you get your damage and wind threat from. At least that's one of the components there as well. But again, we got a lot of divergence going on there as well. Let's take a look at these dew points here. And this is what's really catching my attention. Typically with severe weather potential, you need to be, you know, above 60 degrees. But even with upper 50 dew points in the upper 50s, it can still be favorable for some thunderstorms. But generally, the best threshold will be 60 plus, and that's when you can get into these blue colors here. And as you can see here, look at those dew points here. I mean, up across, portions of Kentucky, upper 50 dew points, some isolated, 60 dew points, and you got low to mid 60 dew points across the Carolinas, Georgia, even if I go back a little bit further here, even going on across Alabama, portions of Tennessee, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Definitely a pretty favorable environment. And look at this. You got 60 dew points as far north as eastern Kentucky, southeastern Ohio, portions of West Virginia. This is what we call, feels muggy or whatever, or feels quite humid. This is what this stuff really is. This is kind of like moisture and stuff like that. And this is favorable for some thunderstorms here. Upper 50s to low 60s, that's a favorable environment for some thunderstorms there. Where some of these areas haven't seen thunderstorms in a while. At least across, some of these regions here haven't really seen thunderstorms in a while. So let's move on to most unstable cape. So this is kind of going through all parts of the atmosphere, surface based to, the mid levels, stuff like that. Just generally, the most unstable cape. You can see here, not a lot of cape to talk about here. I mean, you got cape values up across portions of Kentucky, 300, 400 joules per kilogram of cape. You can see across portions of Alabama here. You can definitely see here. Now, this is a little bit better environment here for some severe weather. There may not be a whole lot of cape, but there's still going to be a decent amount of wind shear now. The further south we are here, less wind shear, but there's also a higher amount of instability. Shear 22 knots, that's a little bit more weak for wind shear. We got a decent hodograph there, marginal severe threat. I mean, 71 degrees with a 2.65 degrees there. Definitely a little bit favorable environment. But if we move a little bit further north to portions of Kentucky here, the wind shear environment is much higher. You see 37 knots, that's moderate to strong wind shear. Now, there's not a whole lot of instability to work with. This is what we call low instability, a higher wind shear environment here. And you can still see some thunderstorms that could produce maybe weak tornadoes. It's still a favorable environment for those. We've seen a little bit of a similar environment where there's a low amount of instability, but a higher amount of wind shear across the Carolinas the other day that had an enhanced risk. By the way, it was a bust of a day there. But, it could still be favorable for some, at least for some weak tornadoes across some of those regions there. Now, this is bulk shear, surface to 500 millibars. This is kind of like wind direction and height. This kind of gives us how much wind shear there really is. Higher the numbers, more favorable environment for higher amount of wind shear. If this can load in. And as you can see here, we got quite a bit of wind shear going on here. Some areas as high as 90 knots. That's a lot of wind shear when you talk about there. I mean, generally with these numbers here, a favorable environment for wind shear will generally be 40 plus knots, and we're getting places of getting nearly 90 knots. I mean, 2 times the amount, so it's going to be a pretty high wind shear environment, most certainly there. So this is storm relative Helice here. This kind of gives us a little bit better idea with the tornado threat threshold. As you can see here, very high amount of storm relative helicity across Kentucky here. That's going to be along that warm front there. Then when you get to the better warm sector, you got storm relative helicity amounts as high as 250 across central Alabama there. That's pretty favorable environment for some tornadoes there as well. Now this is the Energy Helicity Index here. This is a combination of CAPE and also helicity. As you can see here across portions of Alabama here, pretty low numbers, not too big of a deal. We'll probably have a better idea as we get a little bit later down the road, especially with those higher resolution models, they'll be able to pinpoint a little bit better. But it's quite a favorable environment across eastern Kentucky here, as high as a 1. As you can see here, definitely a decent amount of instability, not a lot of wind shear, but it's definitely a favorable environment for at least some severe weather. Tornado threat, not that as favorable. About a hodograph, probably more marginal severe. Also, pretty strong winds going on at the surface there. When you have red and green lines, far apart like this, that indication of some strong winds. We're also seeing that at the surface. And that's non-thunderstorm winds, so just to keep in mind of that. So now this is the surface cell composite. This is a combination of wind shear and also CAPE, or you could say instability. And this is surface-based, keep in mind. You can see here, not that favorable across Alabama, 1 to 2. It's pretty low numbers. But definitely shows it's really pinpointing eastern Kentucky, portions of West Virginia and Virginia here, as well as high as a 3 across some of these regions here. You can see it shows a marginal tornado threat, but it's probably going to be a little bit more, well, by the holograph, not really favorable for tornadoes, but definitely shows quite elevated amount of instability, 835. And there's still a little bit low amount of wind shear, so there's definitely a severe weather threat, so just to keep in mind that there's well. And there can also continue to the Carolinas there, which will, again, we'll have a little better idea on it as we get closer. Now this is the overall look here. Haven't really changed as much yet. We're going to see If malls do shift to the north, that could be a possibility. We're still a little ways away from that event. Well, it's actually only a couple days there, so still still got some time left before the event actually happens. I'll probably release a snowfall forecast tomorrow there as well, so stay tuned for that. Maybe tomorrow, we'll see. Then areas in the blue here, that's where we have that winter storm threat for the secondary system there. The timing is going to be happening around New Year's. Areas of the pink, that's where we have that ice storm threat. Although that's likely to change around some, those things are going to be hard to predict a little bit further out. Then areas in the red, that's where we actually have the severe weather threat there as well. But again, a lot of this stuff is going to change, but we'll have a better idea as we get closer to the event. But anyways, guys, this is ARC for guys today. Hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you guys like this video, hit that like button. If you really do like my channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notifications so you never miss an upload. If you guys have questions about this, you can put in the comment section down below. I'll answer you guys' questions. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.